Okay, YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV. Now today, we're looking at the Forbidden City from space. Again, this is part 2. If you haven't seen my previous video, go back and watch it. It was only a few days ago. Mars Forbidden City, structure seen from space, part 1. You'll find that on my channel. This is part 2. I do recommend this because it's got loads of really nice clips in the end of the video. The last 2 minutes is where all the clips are, which you can see. And I'll put some of those in this video as well. But I'm going to be adding a few more because I found a load more stuff on the mountain, on the city plateau, on Mount Sharp. And I've also been very busy in the last few days. You can just follow the links in the description and you can come to my Gigamacro site here and you can view these things without having to download anything. You can just zoom in yourself and check it out. The colour ones here, this is the colour one. This has been enhanced with brightness and contrast, but nothing else. And this one is the black and white one, which has also been enhanced with brightness and contrast as well. I've done a scale image of this, which is the main building in the area, right? And you can even see inside this building with structures inside it. And what I did is I did a clip of it and I measured the actual pixels. I counted them. It's 25 centimeters per pixel, so I counted them. This central room here, which is like a hall, the central rectangular room here, is 62 feet. And from that, you can kind of work out the scale of everything in this area, okay? But if you look at this structure here, now I know I covered this in the last one, but I'm just going to show you it again because I've basically brightened this up and added a load of contrast to this, so you can actually see inside that there are rectangular structures inside these as well. So they're not just walls. This is actually what I would call a capital building. In other words, it's quite substantial and much bigger than most of the other structures in the area. And it's got multiple rooms. And there are a lot of these pits and holes nearby are also rooms that are partially filled in with sand. And you can actually see that on this image here. The sand is blue, by the way, in this area. So a lot of this blue stuff is actually just sand that's drifted across, okay? But if you look carefully, you can actually see details inside this room here, like there's a stairway or something going down here. Now, if you want to look at them really closely, I do advise you use a magnifier, and the one I'm using is a Chrome extension. So if you go into your Chrome settings and extensions, and then type in magnifying glass, and hover zoom in brackets, then this will come up and you can download it and it attaches to your browser, which means when you're looking at these images online, like this site, you can just click on it like this and then really zoom in. And unlike a real magnifying glass, which you use with your hand, this will not enlarge the pixels on the screen. This will just enlarge the image without giving you the pixel distortion, which is, it kind of smooths it out slightly, which I think is really good. And if you look carefully in here, you can actually see a dark patch, like there's some steps going down in this area here, and you can also see it in the black and white one. I'm not sure it's as clear on this one. If you look really carefully, you can see just here, there's a line coming across there, and there's a dark patch just here, as if there's steps going down into another level, okay? And I do think that this building is actually multiple levels, and we're only seeing the exposed part. And some of these round structures in the area, I also think may have been towers that have collapsed. And some of the square structures as well. This may have been much, much higher at one point. If you use the magnifier on the black and white one, you can really see the details. You can even see individual block work here and how some of these structures were put together. And this one is interesting, that you've got a large column sticking up there or something. There's a round part on top. There's something going on there. You can really see some amazing details. So you're actually looking inside an alien building. I've called it a capital building. I don't think it was a castle. It may have been a governmental building or something, or army barracks, or you could call it a castle, I suppose, a government building. This building dominates the area, and when you zoom out, you'll see that this is the most prominent one when you look at it from this angle, from space, and it would have dominated all of this. And it's on quite a flat plateau here, and the plateau has got loads and loads of smaller structures down here, which I showed before. But what I'm going to show you now is all the terracing. Now the terracing here, we've got structures here. Let me zoom in. You can really see them because I've enhanced the contrast, and some of them have got square structures inside them, like this one here. You can actually see a square here, another square here, another square here, and another one here. So some of these were buildings, and which are now ruined and been flattened by the looks of it. But some of this is also terracing. Some of this further down the mountain, like I showed before, is actual terracing here. These areas here, and this goes all the way down the mountain, and there's loads and loads of it. It goes all the way down here, and then there's a load more here, not as clear here, and I think a lot of these are ruins here. They're pretty hard to make out, but you can see some structures in there. But basically down here, further down, there's some more crazy structures. I'll try not to zoom in too quickly. Just here, with a sort of square one here, and a load of crazy ones here. I mean, this stuff's all over the place. And then up here, there's some even more crazy stuff. Just here. Now, I'm not saying all this is artificial. I'm sure a lot of it's natural. But knowing that there are buildings and terraces and all sorts of other things in the area, you've got to look at some of these things and wonder what they actually are, and whether they're actually natural structures that have been modified. Okay? I'm not saying they're completely artificial. I'm saying they may be partly artificial because they've been modified and built on. There's some very weird stuff going on here, and I don't fully understand what all of it is, to be honest. It's absolutely insane. There's some crazy, crazy stuff, and I've marked it all out for you here, but there's loads of stuff in between these markers. So check the markers out, and you'll find near each marker there are structures. A lot of them are rectangular, like this one, but some of them are kind of weird, and that this one's got like tubes and structures going over each other and in and out. I mean, it's absolutely insane. What I think some of this may be, where this has been ruined and destroyed, some of this may be some of the structures that were under the ground, and the surface has collapsed inwards, and some of these are underground structures, or were underground structures, and have now been exposed. Absolutely insane, some of this stuff. Unfortunately, you can't see all of this in the colour version. The colour version here is a narrow strip. It's only about a kilometre wide, I think. And this is to scale, so the measure on this is actually accurate, okay? So when you zoom in, it gives you a pretty good size of what everything is. And you can see those terraces down here and structures in colour. And I also think there are irrigation channels here. Now, if you look carefully in some of these areas, it shows up better in the black and white one here. Let me show that what I think might be irrigation channels. If you look carefully down here, we got all this terracing, and if you look carefully, we've got these long structures here. Now, this is where the terrace changes height. We go down a step, and then down another step, then down another step, and then down another step. It's a little bit like Machu Picchu here. Now, Machu Picchu is obviously in Peru, and we got a kind of fortress city or town way up in the Andes Mountains in Peru, and lots of structures, but also loads of terracing. Now, of course, the terracing would have been used to grow crops on, because obviously if you're this high up a mountain, it'd be very difficult to import all your food. You would have to have enough food to support the local population. In other words, you have to grow food close by, and that would save you having to bring it all the way up the mountain on alpacas or whatever. The actual mountainside is very high up and very steep incline, right? Whereas on Mars, what we're looking at on Mars is nowhere near as steep. This is more like a plateau here, a large plateau, You can see it in the black and white one better. This whole area here is relatively flat. And it's not till you get to about here, it starts to drop down towards the base of Mount Sharp and Gale Crater down here, right? So this is nowhere near as high up. And also the fact is, even though this is at altitude, the mountain itself in Gale Crater is in a crater. You've got different levels of terraces here, and these all go down in altitude as you go up the image, okay? There's some crazy stuff here. It's really hard to get it across, really. And somewhere here, I managed to find what looked like some irrigation channels in the ground. You can actually see these kind of like dark lines like we have here. There's a dark line that goes across here, and it sort of goes right across up here by this big rock kind of structure. We've got these rectangular structures in the ground. So there was a building here. So what we may have here are different levels of construction, some very, very ancient, some more modern. Now, if you watch Brian Forster's channel on YouTube, he goes into this in detail, and he will give you actual views of this with his quadcopter and take you around and show you the different levels of construction. So a lot of this is very ancient construction, which was then built on later, and it was probably many thousands of years old. And the Incas came along and then found this place and then decided to build on top of it. Now that may have also happened in Gale Crater on Mars, where we have this. So we may be looking at different levels of construction here, and a later civilization may have come along and moved in and then built on top. But I'm sure a lot of these structures, if you look into them, you can actually see inside the actual structures on the Martian building here, and you can even see what looks like a doorway here. If you look at the black and white one, it's even clearer because it's got more contrast in it. Just here. Let's go in close. Right. And you can always change the level of zoom on this this application, this magnifier. You can actually see a darker area here as if it's going down into another level. And you can see what looks like a doorway here. Some interesting details up here. I mean, this is insane. That looks like another sort of porch or doorway here going through this wall. These walls are over 1 meter thick. That's pretty thick for a wall, okay? So these are quite substantial structures. They're not just little houses. These are, and here you can see what look like doorways, these square doorways or windows or something. You can actually see that there were people probably living in these buildings, and you can see the actual layout inside, because we're not looking straight down. What's good about these particular images of Gale Crater and Mount Sharp is we're looking at an angle, and it tells you the angles on here. These are taken at a slight angle, phase angle 49.9 degrees, so we're not looking straight down, so we can see walls sticking up, which is much better than looking straight down, because all you would see then are sort of random patterns. We're actually seeing perspective here. You can actually see the base of the wall there. You can see it slightly better on this one. You can actually see the base of the wall sticking up, right? And the back wall here, which is taller. And we've got this detail on top of this one. We've got this room here, and there's the wall sticking up here, this light part. So you can actually see where this was constructed, and this was probably much taller because we've got this bit sticking up here. So there may be a tower here, like a round tower, or another one here maybe, a bit like a castle. Okay, and you can even see in some areas we've got these long lines here. These may be pathways and stuff like that as well. You've got these long bright lines going right across the image on this plateau part here. And there do seem to be what look like, if you go down here, these dark lines that's going a long sort of line. They're not perfectly straight. These look like irrigation channels to me. And some of these channels here may be irrigation channels going down the edge here and then feeding across into these areas here where they were possibly growing crops. Don't ask me what crops they were growing, I have no idea. But it really does look very much like what you see in ancient sites like this one at Machu Picchu. And basically, this is what it would have looked like. But you have to imagine this on a much less steep mountain, on a lower kind of plateau, and a much, much larger city than this. This is actually more like a town than the city. When you look at it on here, you can see it goes right across and down the mountain, especially on this one, on the black and white one. You can see that it goes right down here, all the way to other parts of the city, or satellite parts of the city, like we have here. And also right over here, there's loads and loads more of these kind of structures, many of which are rectangular, like we have here. They're all over the place. There's absolutely tons of them. And there's some weird features like this. Now this was interesting. We have a hole here, and a load of material going into the hole, right? We've got an almost round, it's actually sort of hexagonal or octagonal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, it's octagonal. This hole here, which looks artificial, right? And if you zoom out, you can see there's all this material coming down here between these two large structures or rocks either side. These outcrops here, and it's like the material is being funneled into it. Now, what could that be? I wonder, because it really does look like the material is actually tipping or going down into this hole. Now, what this may have been is an underground entrance. And what's happened is that sand and material has drifted down the mountain here. This is going downhill as we go up, down here, to the bottom of this kind of funnel area. It's funneled it in, and it's going down into this hole. So this may have been a well or some kind of drainage kind of structure or something, a storm drain or something like that. And what's happened is, since it's been ruined, the material has just kind of slipped down the mountain, sand and rubble slipped down, and is tipping into it, or has tipped into it. Very strange. Let's look at that with a magnifier very quickly. You can actually see the material going into this hole. That was really weird. I thought that was a really interesting detail. And there's some crazy stuff here. Now, I'm sure a lot of this is natural, like I said, but some of these structures could be very, very old indeed and very eroded. And they would have probably been built up and had high towers and high structures, some of them square, some of them round, all sorts of shapes and structures. And then we've got this area here where you've got all these kind of cracks in the ground. Now, I'm not saying this is all artificial, but this, maybe some of it, be artificial. You've got all these long fissures, okay? And some of them look very square. And you had to ask yourself, when there are buildings in the area, you've really got to look at all the geography in the area and ask yourself seriously whether it's actually been modified. Basically, you've got to really question everything you're looking at. And there's some of those square structures. These actually look better on the colour version here. These are all marked. Square structures here. I showed these in the last video. Multiple square structures. And you can use the magnifier and really go in and have a look at these. You can actually see inside them. These are kind of filled in with sand, but you can actually see a square structure here, another rectangle here, another one here, another square here, as I showed before. So I'll put clips of these in again in a minute. But some of these came out really well, and these structures go all the way down here. This whole strip here are structures. Now this is on the edge of the ancient riverbed here. This would have had water in it at one point. But later on in the civilization, I would imagine that dried out largely. So they may have had to drill wells into the ground later on to get water and bring it up. But basically we got square structures here, we got some more here, there's a rectangular one here. They're all over the place. And once you get the magnifier, you can really see what some of these things are. And you can actually see all these multiple rectangles and ruins and walls and stuff everywhere. It's absolutely insane. it's actually hard for me to get it across how much there is here. And this was one of the structures I showed in the last video. This looks better if you take a clip and turn it upside down. You can actually see a square building here. I have shown this before. There's a square building here, right here, with a kind of round hole in the top with a square structure around it, okay? And you can see the structure there. So we've got a rectangle there, another one here, got another one here, and once you start looking, they're all over this area, okay? But what you have to bear in mind is that not all of them are rectangular buildings, some were polygonal shaped, and we've also got sand drifting into a lot of this stuff, covering it up. And a lot of it's ruined, so it's collapsed, but you can see multiple squares here. There's some more here. They're all over the place. So I'll leave you guys and girls to look at this yourself. I could go on and on about this forever, really, but what I'm trying to get across here is that if you look further down the mountain, the terracing goes on and on all the way down. It starts up here and goes all the way down here to here, okay? And there's a load more structures in this image than I've shown. There's a load of crazy stuff here, absolutely insane, and absolutely crazy detail that can be seen here. Now a lot of it's natural, like I said, but a lot of it isn't. This will actually give you a pretty good scale anyway on here when you zoom in, because I actually put the scale in properly with these images because they're properly scaled by NASA, so I know what size they are exactly. So that's all pretty cool. So you can work out roughly what size some of these things are, like this square thing here. You can, that's 20 meters, so that's pretty big. That's about 60 foot across. So the scales actually work on these, so you can work out how large things are. And I'm sure a lot of it, like it shows here, you've got these much larger blocks here, which were from a much earlier, more advanced civilization, and then the smaller, much less sophisticated stonework on top, which is the Inca stonework. This stuff below it is pre-Inca. I would imagine, although I can't prove it just yet, we don't have quite enough detail, I would imagine that there may have been similar things going on here where different civilizations moved in and then rebuilt part of this stuff later on, okay? So it all been nicely worked out and carefully irrigated, okay? So thanks for watching, everybody. If I find anything else I haven't shown you that is really cool, I'll put some clips in a minute. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you soon.